It was an unusual moment in Parliament yesterday to see such cross-party support for Keir Starmer. Tom Tugendhat, the guy who was running to be leader of the Conservatives last autumn, said he spoke for Britain. James Cleverly said he was doing, all the right things. I mean, even Kemi Badenoch was pretty supportive. Striking.
Yeah, I was in the House of Lords actually yesterday, and I was talking to some Tory MPs, and they said this has probably been Starmer's best few days since he's been Prime Minister. How much this will resonate with the voters when we hear today food prices are soaring for the highest level for a year, but he's treading a diplomatic, he's in a diplomatic minefield. This could become so absorbing and all-consuming, He's in the thick of it, and I still wonder if he's overplayed his hand by talking about British troops on the ground in Ukraine. I don't sense the public are with him on that.
I get a bit windy about the lack of debate and discussion, actually. And I don't mean Nigel Farage and reform being too close to Trump and he's in the past been accused of being a Putin fanboy. I just mean those issues like what will it mean for Britain? How do you handle the USA? Do we really want to put British boots on the ground in Ukraine, and where could that lead? Because if they go in as part of an international peacekeeping force and Putin is half as malign as Starmer says, the firing is going to start. And if the firing starts, you'd have to fire back. And then do you get sucked in, people coming back in body bags? I think, no, I'm backed Ukraine all the way in sending arms, back them all the way in imposing economic sanctions on the Putin regime and his supporters, back giving financial aid to Ukraine, back Ukrainians coming here, 200,000 or so, homes for Ukraine. But when it gets to the point of British bodies being on that front line, that's where I draw a line. And there's no discussion of that now.
No.
And there should be.
Well, that discussion...
I think he said he'd put it to a Commons vote, I think, he said.
But you should,
didn't he?
Yes, but you should have the discussion now. That we should be debating that now.
But the terms of the discussion are going to change, because we now know the White House confirming America is stopping, for the time being, stopping military aid to Ukraine. And America's just not listening.
So I think, as I said, I think he might have to choose.
Didn't Starmer choose on Sunday? On Friday, you have the bust-up.
Yeah.
Zelensky is effectively thrown out of the White House after his argument. And then, on Saturday and Sunday, Zelensky is not only invited by Keir Starmer to the meeting with European leaders, but also has a meeting with the King.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that Britain choosing?
It feels like it.
It is.
Especially it's going to become more sharply focused, because not only is he pausing the aid to Ukraine, he was very critical of Europe, what happened at the weekend, the President. Very critical.
We didn't have to choose in previous presidencies, but here you've got a hostile president who is very cosy with Putin, personally cosy, so you have to choose. And he wants to keep his relations with Trump as best as he can, but you've got to choose, and we are choosing.
The benign interpretation,
and we're doing the right choice.
The benign interpretation of Trump is that he thinks, in order to get the deal, and everybody wants a deal, a peace if it can be had, the only way for him to do that is to be neutral between Ukraine and Russia, to bring Putin and Zelensky to the table, and that, OK, Europe is choosing, but he wants America to be the honest broker.
You do not get a deal by making the injured party, Ukraine, which he said started the war, it wasn't, they were invaded, called Zelensky a dictator, he's a Democrat, it's Putin the dictator. You do not get Putin to make a deal by weakening Ukraine and Zelensky, which is what they are doing. They're undermining him, saying he's got to go, bawling him out of the Oval Office, and now pausing military aid. Trump is weakening Ukraine. Why is Putin going to do a deal?
But Lord Mandelson said, he was slapped down by that minister on your programme yesterday, but Lord Mandelson effectively said yesterday that Ukraine should accept what's on the table and get on with it.
Yeah, but that's been dismissed by the government. They said that that's not what they are suggesting.
But you wonder if that view is going to harden.
The trouble is, we've got Sir Keir Starmer, pulling off this kind of diplomatic coup at the weekend, bringing all the European leaders together, forging ahead with a plan for peace with the coalition of the willing. And then you've got America saying, you're showing weakness. Trump says in the last line of his Truth Social post, Europe, in the meeting they had with Zelensky, stated flatly that they can't do the job without the US. Probably not a great statement to have made in terms of a show of strength against Russia. What are they thinking? It's like he's just undermining Sir Keir Starmer. How many times can Sir Keir Starmer call President Trump and say, you know, this isn't helpful? Can you please, you know, move forward on this rather than move backwards? And in the wake of that conversation he had with President Trump says, unless Zelensky is more appreciative and comes grovelling back to the White House, goodbye to the, $150 billion of aid that they're giving to
And he's reiterating the
Ukraine?
point again, that he thinks this is Europe's problem, because Ukraine is in Europe, nowhere near the United States.
Well, and as Ed mentioned earlier, of course, that is absolutely part of the reason why Americans voted for
America
Trump.
first.
They don't want to pay for a war they don't see that they have any interest in.
I suspect this is playing really well for Trump in the United States. That's what he cares about. He's the newly elected president of the United States, and a lot of them will probably think, where is Ukraine?
Trump is now Europe's problem. That's it. It's not, you know, who's creating the trouble now? It's not Putin. We know where we've been for 3 years, if not before. It is, we've now got a hostile leader in the US, and Starmer is trying to do his best to rub off some rough edges, hope to get a few little minor concessions, try and bring him back in somewhere. But it feels like, at the moment, he's just getting nowhere because Trump is getting worse.
But when we say Trump is Europe's problem, we also mean that we can't rely on Trump and the Americans being there this year and next year.
Absolutely.
We know that Putin has shown aggression time and time again. So the question is, what do you actually do? Keir Starmer is saying what he hopes will happen, which is that America stays engaged. He can't rely upon that.
No.
So what does it actually mean in terms of, you know, defence spending across Europe?
Huge increases.
What does it mean in terms of people? I mean, we're debating after 7 o'clock with Simon Weston and Ian Duncan-Smith whether we would want our sons and daughters to go to war. But, of course, you know, in wars, it's not always a choice whether people go to war. And, you know, conscription, we've not had conscription in our country for very many decades. But if you look across Europe, Sweden, Denmark, Lithuania, Finland, Latvia, all have versions of conscription. Not always where everybody has to. Germany only got rid of conscription in 2011. Actually, Sweden suspended conscription and then reintroduced it in 2017. Not everybody does it, but
literally get a chill as we discuss it. I've got 3 sons of that age.
Yeah.
And
this is the world we might be living in.
I know.
No, but look, it's all about deterrence. It's not about hopefully attacking Russia. Europe,
but as you said,
Europe outspends.
But Trump is undermining our deterrence.
But Europe outspends Russia hugely. I mean, like, in NATO, even if you take the US out, Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all, and that's where you can get sucked in. But the very fact that is there
But we've always had America as a backstop.
Yeah,
we have always had America as the massive power that guarantees if things go wrong, they will step in. And you're absolutely right. Europe collectively, our economy is way bigger than Russia's. We could do it.
British economy is bigger than Russia's.
But we don't... Would we want to? You know, we had this study last month saying that half of Gen Z, 11% of Gen Z said they would be willing to fight for Britain in a war. We have a generation of conscriptable young people who say they wouldn't want to do it. Only 1 in 10 back this country. I mean, we're not looking like...
Hang on, no. You can back Britain and not think you want to fight in a war. I mean,
half of Gen Z believe the country is racist.
This should be about the avoidance of war. There's enough people who've suffered racism in Britain. I understand where they're coming from there. But this is about
undermining their allegiance.
This is about avoiding war, not marching to war.
But
that's where we should be.
But deterrence, which is about avoiding war, is showing that you're ready for war if the war happens. And therefore, it might be that in order to show and to deter, we might have to, I mean, I'm not going to say conscript, you certainly have to expand the number of troops which we could put into a European theatre into Ukraine or to other places, to have ready substantially.
And one way to do it, you could massively expand the territorial army, for instance, which is the weekend soldiers, increase the numbers of those.
But aren't these the things we're going to be talking about? Yeah. I mean, if it's real...
We will, and if you're going to do that, you're going to have to accept that the armed forces find it incredibly difficult to recruit now because they don't pay very well.
Well, also,
and the job prospects aren't very great. There are no job guarantees when you come out. And look, after the show yesterday, I was getting a tube, go down the station, and there was a guy shaking a charity tin for homeless veterans. Yeah. So where's the pact there? Why are the disproportionately large numbers of veterans who appear to be homeless? You've got to tackle all those issues if you want to get more people into the army.
Good luck with the recruitment drive at the moment for the army. If people think, I might be sent to fight in the wastes of the frozen wastes of Ukraine.
Well, but that is why you end up in societies with conscription.
Yeah.
Because if the recruitment drive doesn't work, at a certain point...
Absolutely.
Britain's one of I think it's the 6th world's biggest military spender already. I think we are... I'm not dismissing threats, but we are losing a sense of perspective here in this headlong rush. Now, there's a big problem in Ukraine. I'm not denying that. What Trump is doing, we can fill some of the gap. But if the US, because it's the world's biggest military power, outspends more than, I think it's something like there's like 7 or 8 countries combined, including us. If they're pulling military support, Ukraine is going to, well, it's certainly going to be able to push the Russians out. It'll lose a bit quicker.
But the only thing, Kevin,
there's no question about that.
The only thing I'm saying is you and I have known each other for 35 years. At no point in the last 35 years until these months would we ever have thought we could have a conversation about whether you might need to reconsider conscription. It was just totally off the agenda. I'm not saying we're going to do it. No. I'm just saying we're going to have conversations we haven't had for decades.
And you know why we're having it? It's not because of the traditional enemy, if that's how he's going to be painted, Putin, although there was a period where Russia came in from the cold. It is because of Trump. The leader of a supposed ally is now hostile. That's why we're in...
OK,
so
I appreciate the point.
We can't lose why.
Putin. It's because what Putin did. It's because of the invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah. No, but he invaded Ukraine. He didn't invade the UK or any NATO country.
But just maybe the great deal-maker, Trump, maybe this is just brinkmanship.
Can I just bring you, because we've got breaking news right now. Downing Street have issued a response to the news this morning. So this is just to remind you, a White House official confirmed to CBS News in America that the United States is pausing military aid to Ukraine. This is the White House official statement earlier. The president has been clear he's focused on peace. We need our partners to be committed to that goal. We're pausing and reviewing our aid to ensure it is contributing to a solution. Downing Street this morning have hit back by pouring cold water on it for now. We've not had formal announcement from US. Remains media speculation. UK remains committed to putting Ukraine in the strongest possible position, e.g. the ERA loan signed at the weekend and £3 billion a year commitment. UK is also working intensively to bring US and Ukraine back together. So interesting. They are sort of dampening down, despite the fact that CBS News say the White House official confirmed.
Yeah, we'll find out by the end of the day whether number 10 in the UK foreign policy establishment is clued in or out.
Come on, there wasn't much dampening down in there. No. I don't read that statement and think that they are dampening that down.
Well, they're
they're essentially saying that there's a problem and we're trying to solve it.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you interpret that, because they say it's not a formal announcement, it's media speculation.
Well, exactly. Yeah, but you know, if somebody says speculation, you think, so probably true then. I mean, there's been no
not a denial, is it? That is
not a denial.
Yeah.
No formal announcement. Yeah. We're working hard to bring them back together.
They've just called
what they're saying is they've fallen apart and we're trying to bring them back together.
They've just
I think it's a good statement. I'm not complaining about the statement, but I don't feel reassured by that statement.
No, it's definitely... I don't think anyone's going to feel reassured
I imagine Peter Manson, the new ambassador, has been woken up in his bed in the official residence saying, find out what the hell's going on.
That statement shows the UK has got very little influence over Trump.
Yes.
That's
the real problem.
That's
despite all the warm words and the embraces.
Yeah. It's worth maybe just reflecting also on J.D. Vance, the Vice President, who is playing a much bigger kind of formative role in American policy than I've seen Vice Presidents do for decades.
He admitted, we heard from Noel earlier in that interview that J.D. Vance did, admitting it was his intervention that wound Zelensky up and led to the confrontation.
Yeah.
Basically, if J.D. Vance hadn't been there, we probably would have had a 40-minute appearance with Trump and Zelensky where they were pretty much on the same page, because that's what it had been like up until this point, where J.D. Vance says, you're not grateful enough, you haven't said thank you.
And you're not respectful enough.
Vance is nasty, really nasty, and very ideologically nasty. Remember, on his trip to Germany, he went and met the leader of the hard-right Alternative for Deutschland party. Didn't meet the would-be chancellor, didn't meet the then chancellor. So, look, he and Elon Musk are two peas from the same rancid pod.
If the White House is pausing or stopping aid, can this state visit by Trump really go ahead? Isn't that going to be a very diplomatic difficulty for the king? Who saw the president of Ukraine on Sunday, thought he's going to warmly embrace the president of the United States who's paused or stopped aid?
Well,
because they're hoping this visit is going to happen this year. It's going to be very difficult.
After he's had a staid visit to Russia and stood at the Kremlin for the May Day parade of tanks.
This will be very difficult.
It all goes to what you said earlier, Andrew, which is they have to hope Trump's playing a savvy game and that this is all part of a theatre. You know, that it's not entirely random, that there's some purpose to it, and this is what he has to do to take American public opinion with. He has to be tough for a period. And therefore, you know, the one thing which would completely kibosh progress would be us to retaliate by cancelling the
we can't cancel it, but what we could do is just keep putting it off.
Can I just point out, sorry,
not been a hurry to have it.
I'm just seeing the life of Brian, the end, and you know Jesus on the cross singing, always look on the bright side of life. Look, if you look at Trump, he's always favoured and fawned before authoritarian white nationalists and dictators. He's always fawned over Putin. You can go back to his trip in the 90s, which was organised by the KGB. I think, and I'm sorry, there's horrible intent here.
Yeah. Can I just say, J.D. Vance, in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, called Donald Trump an idiot, said he was reprehensible, and privately, he allegedly compared him to Adolf Hitler.
America's Hitler.
This is the man who is now sitting next to Donald Trump.
Well, he's a heartbeat away from the White House.
Criticising President.
Rifle shot.
Can we move on to domestic issues? Because you've already mentioned that it's about how this plays domestically eventually, which is going to affect Sir Keir Starmer. Big piece in your paper today, winter fuel allowance. It is a massive issue. We have reported on the anger, upset, detriment of winter fuel allowance taken away from most pensioners, and 450 questions are required to be answered. The deadline is the end of this month for applications for winter fuel allowance. And you have an example in your paper, Andrew, of a pensioner 69 years old reduced to tears by the process. Susan says, not only were the questions difficult to understand, dwelling on all of the things I am no longer capable of doing sent me into a very dark place. And another said, by the time you finished, you feel absolutely awful, mentally exhausted and worried you won't get the help. I mean, we managed to get someone the help here on this programme, didn't we? But not everybody's got the help of a team of fantastic producers on a television programme to help get it for them.
Far too many questions, and it's taking far too long. And we're having really cold weather at the moment. There are pensioners watching this programme who will not put the heating on.
Yeah, and unless you're eligible for pension credit, you're not eligible for the winter fuel allowance anymore, Kevin. And it's a real sort of... at the time when the government's saying, right, billions more for Ukraine, really important to support Ukraine...
Let me ask you, Kevin, because the polling shows that the winter fuel allowance being taken away from middle and low-income pensioners is by far... the policy which is cut through to the public more than any other policy, like 3 to 1. People know about that more than anything else. There'll be government ministers thinking, but, you know, the weather's warming up. Alex is saying it's sunny. We're going to get to May and June and is going to go away. Is the winter allowance going to go away as an issue, or do you think this is going to be a running sore?
I think it's scarring. I think it'll scar the government all the way through, and it'll be quartered back. And every time they make a decision spending elsewhere, it'll say, "Hang on, you took that away," and you wouldn't expect it from a Labour government.
What would you advise the Chancellor to do?
I would, even at this very late stage, I would certainly bring something back before the next election.
Why can't politicians admit they got things wrong?
It was a Tory black hole. We're in a bad position. Things are somehow improving. We've somehow found the extra money. Because people have lost it on very small occupational pensions. Your occupational pension might be only 20 or 30 quid a week. You've worked 45 years.
The trouble is
you've paid in, and all of a sudden what you are getting back is gone. And you're losing, it's cash as well. It's £200 to £300.
We've got to cut international aid, we've got to spend more on defence. We've got all these new pressures.
I'm not denying.
They should just say, we've heard, we feel your pain, we've got it wrong, and it's big to admit you got it wrong.
£2.5 trillion economy, in a £2.5 trillion economy, winter fuel allowance in the government finances was the equivalent of a few coins down the back.
You're the Chancellor Exchequer, and you managed to unite Kevin and Andrew.
You've been quite an achievement.
Against you.
No, wrong.
There's something there.
But you know, these questions, though, Susanna, sorry, it's means testing. Means testing is always mean, both in the questions that are asked and at the margin if you lose out and you think, I'm just a quid over and I've gone off a cliff. That's what happened. You go off a cliff here. It's not as if it's withdrawn gradually. It can be a quid over and you lose your £200 or £300, the lot.
And this comes as today it's revealed that food prices have risen at their third fastest monthly rate in a year, 2.1%.
These are the core bread and butter issues that really affect people most.
Right.
And while the Prime Minister's talking on and on and on about Ukraine, these are the issues that are really hurting people.
Which is maybe why the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is out this morning.
Sure.
Because she's the one, isn't she, who's in charge of the domestic agenda. Just talking about domestic agendas, are you going to be watching at 8 o'clock when Netflix finally drop, in American parlance, Meghan's new show? Andrew, I bet
I'm busy.
You're going to be hate-watching.
I know, I'm busy.
Apparently that's a concept.
Apparently...
Should we have some pictures of it
let's have,
while we talk about it? This is with love,
this is just
Meghan.
what working mums do, apparently,
for the
children.
It's what she does, and she's a working mum.
I can't remember my mum doing us a nice fruit platter before she went to work when we were kids.
Just opened a tin of pineapple chunks and put them in a dish, did she?
But we like them very much.
Of all the things I would like to improve on in my life, there are many. Making a fruit platter is not near me top million.
No, you can have little clouds of yoghurt.
She does clouds of yoghurt. I love that.
We were watching this earlier, and she was sprinkling, and I said, you can't sprinkle sugar on the fruit. And Susanna said, no, she said it's dried flowers.
She sprinkled...
Dried flowers.
She's sprinkling dried flowers.
Do you buy those in Morrison's? I mean, absolutely ridiculous.
You're not going to be able to resist watching.
There they are. They're going on now. That is the dried flowers being sprinkled on.
Who doesn't have dried flowers on their Weetabix?
I'm thinking, what are you doing, sugar on the fruit?
But you're right. In a way, it's going to be irresistible. But it'd be rather like when you've got toothache and you...
I'm going to watch it for you so we can talk about it when we come back.
There we go. I love that.
With love.